Hello YouTube, Dave here again. I'm going to take a break from my series on the D&D 5th edition classes. I just want to talk about something that's kind of happened in the last couple of weeks and something that's been going on for a while, and I just want to give my take on it. Unlike other videos, this is not going to be edited or processed. There's not going to be a fancy intro. I just want to get this out, this subject out, and basically present it as genuinely as possible. So I just want to start off by saying that I've been playing Dungeons & Dragons since 1999. I started with 2nd edition and am in sort of a unique position amongst gamers that haven't been playing since day one, because I have played every version of D&D that's been out there. I played basic or 0 edition. I played 1st edition AD&D. I've ran 2nd. I've ran 3.0, 3.5, 4th edition D&D Essentials, and I've run 5th edition. I gamed with a group. We got together once a week for years to play D&D, and it just to show how much of an impact that it's had on me. I'm recently, almost a year ago this week, moved about 100 kilometers away, a little over an hour and 20-minute drive away from the town that I used to be in to be with my fiance. And I love her to death, and I would move again in an instant, if that option was ever, presented to me again. So it's nothing that I regret. But I have missed the hobby. We are planning on getting married sometime in the spring, late spring or early summer. And the 2 of the 3 people that I want standing up there with me are people that I met through D&D. The other person that I want up there with me is my grandfather, who was my father figure, who was the man that raised me and made me into the person that I am today. Also, though, the D&D hobby has had its share of helping me and shaping me into the person that I am today as well. It's been a long time since I've had any regular sort of game. It's been almost a year now, and I turned to the internet. I turned to a group on Facebook, the RPG one-shot, tabletop role-playing one-shot group. I know I got the name wrong, and if you're on the page and you're watching this, I do apologize. But I put a post on there just saying I'm looking to run a game. And in the message I put, what editions that I was looking to run. I was looking to run 2nd edition, I was willing to run 4th edition, I was willing to run 5th edition. So I got a lot of responses back, and most of them were positive, but then inevitably I had the one coming up saying, I play 3.5 or nothing at all. My response to that was simple: I have no interest in running 3.5 or 3rd edition. There's a reason that I left it off the list. After that, somebody else came up with a smart comment saying I should have left 4th edition off the list as well. And the person who created the page actually went on and commented on it, saying that this was not the place to discuss the different editions, and I agree. Wasn't my intention to spark this kind of debate, but it's something that I really do want to address, and I'm going to do it now. I'm going to start off by saying this is purely an opinion piece. Obviously, everybody's entitled to their own opinions, and everybody's opinion is going to be different. So, I'm not looking to chastise individuals, just, lines of thinking, and I'd like to see some of this start to change. I've been on some social media sites, like mostly Facebook pages, but there's been some online forums and threads that I've followed over the years, and I've noticed that a lot of people tend to have their favorite edition of the game, which is fine. Everybody should certainly have their favorite version. I've seen new people come on in the last few years, and they were excited about the hobby. They wanted to reach out to other gamers, and they wanted to share their love of the hobby, only to be shot down and ostracized and criticized because they weren't playing real D&D. Now, a lot of these cases, the people probably continued to game, but I can imagine that their desire to interact with other older, more experienced gamers was probably dampened by this experience, and some may have quit the hobby altogether because, it went from being something that they were excited about and, wanted to socialize about, to something they were almost afraid to talk about because they got shot down so hard. I want to start off by saying that every version of D&D, every edition, is Dungeons & Dragons. The D&D experience is about getting together with friends, having a few laughs, if you're old enough, maybe having a few drinks. It's a social activity, and it's something that is a great way to spend an afternoon or an evening, or a weekend if you're young enough to be able to do it like I used to be able to. I began with 2nd edition, and I wasn't really huge into it. It was the only version out at the time, and I got to the point where I was comfortable running it, but eventually I did move on to 3rd. And I enjoyed 3rd. I played 3rd edition for quite some time. When 4th edition was announced, like a lot of people, I was upset, and I wasn't happy with a lot of the changes that they had made. I felt that it was, kind of turning their back on, traditional gamers in favor of something else. But, what was my opinion at the time. What changed that is the Christmas of 2008, so just a few months after 4th edition came out. I was unwrapping my Christmas presents, and I had my present for my mother. And, I was expecting it to be clothes because that's usually what it was. Maybe a pair of jeans, pajama bottoms, something. I opened up the box, and it was the 4th edition Player's Handbook. This book right here, this is the exact one that I got from her. And this meant the world to me. Not because it was, 4th edition D&D. At the time that I unwrapped this present, I had no intention of ever touching it or ever using it. But it was a gift from my mother. It was tied to the hobby that I loved, and it meant the world to me. It was a situation where the thought really did matter more than the actual gift itself. I continued to run 3rd edition for several years after that, 4 years after that. So it was still in 2012, and I was wrapping up my final campaign. The D&D Essentials line had come out, and I hadn't bought anything for a while, so the prices were good. I decided to buy into it, and I started reading it along with, the hardcover 4.0, if you want to call it that, Player's Handbook, and I really started to admire some of the changes. And I incorporated a lot of that into my final 3rd edition campaign. Now, I quickly became a fan of 4th edition, and it got to the point where if I was going to run a version of the game, it was going to be that or maybe 2nd edition. My 3rd edition days were done. I played it for 12 years. I played it to death. I think that as a hobby, D&D is a great way to spend time, but it's not so popular or so practiced a hobby that we should really, feel the need to be exclusive or elitist when it comes to the versions of the game that we've played. I'm sure there are people that bought the original AD&D books in 1974 and had no interest in buying the 1st edition AD&D hardcover book when it came out in 78. I have a friend who will never buy anything other than 2nd edition because that's a version that he loves. There are people that prefer 3.0. There are people that prefer 3.5. And yes, there are people who prefer 4th edition. 4th edition is not the death of D&D. It's not the death of role-playing, and it's a lot of things that people criticize it for were things that were started in 3rd edition that we tend not to acknowledge. 3rd edition was the one that really felt dependent on using maps and miniatures because of things like attacks of opportunity and the number of things that you could get that either provoked them or prevented them. Because attacks of opportunity could be such an impact on the game, the players wanted representation so they know that the DM wasn't just declaring that it was being done without actually being able to see what really triggered it. And DMs wanted to make sure that players were on the same field. I personally preferred using miniatures. I found that it made things a lot easier to keep track of in combat. Even with experienced players that have been doing it for years, it can be chaotic, and it's best if everybody knows exactly where everything else is in relation to one another. 3rd edition introduced the skills that 4th edition got criticized for wanting to kill role-playing. Skill challenges are, in some cases, they could be a solution to role-playing, but you have to actually explain why you're using the skill, and you have to justify its use. You also have to use more than one skill to solve a problem. Unlike 3rd edition, where a lot of times people just wanted to make a single diplomacy check because they had the skill and they thought that that's all they should have to do. This is a hobby that should be something that we can all share and all enjoy together. It's something that should be bringing people apart, building bridges to other gamers and not putting up walls. Everyone who plays D&D plays it because they enjoy the game itself, not necessarily the rules, not necessarily, the vintage of the edition or, the things like that, but because they enjoy the experience of getting together with friends and having a good time. That's the core of what this hobby is. I don't care if you don't, like 3rd edition because it got rid of THACO or because the armor classes went from negatives to positives. I don't care if you don't like 4th edition because it feels like an MMO. Guess what? At the time, MMOs looked to be taking over role-playing. It looked like it was going to be, the death nail, or the final nail in the coffin for tabletop gaming. There were articles in magazines, there were discussions at local game shops, and the impact felt very real. It didn't end up working out that way, of course, but as a business, you need to change with the times. I mean, would we still want to be playing AD&D today the way it is? 3rd edition made a lot of changes, and it was heralded for that, so why couldn't 4th edition try something a little bit different on top of that? All this being said, I think 5th edition D&D, while probably not going to kill the edition wars, will at least brings together a lot of the best aspects of all the various editions of the game. I like it. It's taken over for me from 4th edition as my favorite version of the game, and I think that everybody should really check it out. The other thing that I really would like to see, and I probably won't, but I would love to see this, is instead of debating the rules and instead of making people feel like garbage because they're not playing 3.5 or they're not playing AD&D, or they are playing 3rd edition over AD&D, or they're playing 4th edition over, it doesn't matter. What I would like to see, instead of debating about why a version of the game isn't pure D&D, we should just be sharing our stories about what's happening at the table and really trying to come together as a community. It's a great hobby, it's a social hobby, and it's something that isn't necessarily understood by the masses. So rather than trying to make other people in our small group of hobbyists feel terrible because they're playing a new version of the game, we should be accepting them into the community. Every version of D&D was somebody's first version of D&D. People who started in the late 2000s probably started with 4th edition. People that started at the turn of the new millennium were probably playing 3rd edition. People that began playing in the 90s, likely 2nd edition. And of course, when it all began, you had you had 0 D&D, OD&D, and you had 1st edition. They're all valid forms of the game. I would play any one of them in a heartbeat. There are only a few of them that I would personally run, but I would play any of them in a heartbeat, and I enjoy teaching the game to others, and it doesn't matter which version of it that it is. I taught my fiance, I began with 3rd edition, and then I decided to start teaching her 4th edition, which she preferred over 3rd because it was simpler to understand as a beginner. It's still complicated enough to be enjoyable when the combat did start. I'm limited in the amount of time that I have. I only have a 15-minute runtime for my video, so I'm going to wrap it up by saying it's time to stop arguing semantics over the editions and just start to enjoy the fact that we all love D&D, Dungeons and Dragons, without quabbling over the Vancian spell system or THACO or, looking on charts to see if you hit or miss. It's all valid. It's all D&D. And we as a community should be welcoming one another instead of chastising one another. So that's, I guess, my little mini rant. Eventually, I do plan on discussing the different editions in depth, the pluses and minuses. And of course, these are all, again, going to be opinion pieces. Like I said, I wanted to upload this as just the raw footage. I didn't want there to be edits. I didn't want the audio to be edited. I didn't want, the lighting to look edited. And I didn't want to put in the fancy intro that my fiance worked really hard to make, and I appreciate it, but this is something that I just want to come across as genuine as possible. My name is Dave, I'm a gamer, and I love Dungeons & Dragons, regardless of which version it is, and I hope that you can all start to feel the same, or at least keep your negative opinions to yourself. Welcome other gamers, welcome new players, because they're the ones that are going to ensure that this hobby continues going forward. Thank you very much for watching, YouTube. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope that maybe it'll spark a little bit of debate, but friendly debate. Open and honest discussions and not just slander and, flame wars and stuff like that, because I'm frankly tired of it. Thank you for watching. I'm going to start recording some other videos here. I'm going to finish up my videos on the cleric, and I'm going to record a few others so I can try to pump them out as quickly as possible. Just wanted to get that off my chest, so thank you again, and I hope you continue to watch my videos going forward. Thank you.